Ukraine live briefing, Biden warns of nuclear Armageddon, Russian and Ukrainian groups win Nobel Prize. This year's Nobel Peace Prize was awarded Friday to human rights activists from Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. The prize will be shared by imprisoned Belarusian human rights advocate Alesh Bialyatsky, Russian organization Memorial and Ukraine Center for Civil Liberties. The winners have each made an outstanding effort to document war crimes, human rights abuses, and the abuse of power, the Norwegian Nobel Committee said. As the war drags on, President Biden has warned that the risk of nuclear Armageddon is at its highest since the Cuban Missile Crisis, stating that Putin is not joking about the potential use of nuclear. Putin, who is under increased political pressure at home, may find himself without an off-ramp, prompting Moscow to deploy the weapons of mass destruction, Biden said. However, administration officials say there is no indication that Russia is preparing for an imminent strike. Here's the latest on the war and its ripple effects across the globe. Key developments. Return to menu. The chair of the Nobel Committee said it wished to honor 3 outstanding champions of human rights, democracy, and peaceful coexistence in the neighbor countries of Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine. The chair, Berit Reiss-Andersen, added that we are in the midst of a war, and we are talking about 2 authoritarian regimes and 1 nation fighting a war. And we would like to highlight the importance of civil society. The awarding of the Peace Prize to a Russian group and a Belarusian activist generated immediate criticism in Ukraine, where many politicians and activists view ordinary Russians as complicit in Putin's war, the Washington Post reported. Russia is moving ahead with plans to incorporate the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant into Russia's energy system, although the process could take months, according to officials cited in Russian media on Friday. Work has begun to restart 2 of the power units at Europe's largest nuclear power plant, according to a Kremlin-backed official in the Russian-controlled Ukrainian town of Enerhodar, where the plant is located. A specialist team from the International Atomic Energy Agency is due to visit the Zaporizhzhia plant on Friday, Reuters reports. The visit was scheduled a day after IAEA Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi held a constructive meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev and said that the UN nuclear watchdog recognizes the plant as a Ukrainian facility, despite Putin's decree asserting Russian control over it earlier in the week. Grossi is also due to visit Moscow in the coming days. The IAEA is calling for a security protection zone around the plant. A top Russian official has voiced disagreement directly to Putin in recent weeks, according to U.S. intelligence. The identity of the member of Putin's inner circle is unclear, but questions about Putin's leadership have been simmering in Moscow of late, breaking taboos, with open criticism of top military officials becoming more common. Battleground updates. Return to menu. Russia's missile strikes on residential facilities in Zaporizhzhia killed 11 people on Thursday, Ukraine's State Emergency Service said early Friday. Rescue operations are ongoing. Captured Russian equipment now makes up a large proportion of Ukraine's military hardware, according to Britain's defense ministry on Friday. Ukrainian forces have likely captured at least 440 Russian battle tanks and 650 other armored vehicles since the war began, it said in a daily update. The failure of Russian crews to destroy intact equipment before withdrawing or surrendering highlights their poor state of training and low levels of battle discipline. Ukrainian forces have reclaimed more than 500 square kilometers of territory in the Kherson region, Zelensky said in a nightly address. Still, Ukrainian officials have observed a more strategic and orderly Russian retreat in Kherson than in other regions, signaling what is expected to be a hard fight ahead. 2 Russians fleeing Putin's military draft landed by boat on a remote Alaskan island in the Bering Sea and are seeking asylum in the United States, U.S. officials said Thursday. The unusual incident highlights the lengths some Russians have gone to avoid the mobilization. An estimated 200,000 Russians have fled the country since the call-up. Global impact. Return to menu. European Union leaders are meeting in Prague on Friday to discuss the war and its impact, including rising inflation and energy shortages heading into winter. A day earlier, an inaugural meeting of the newly formed European political community was also held in Prague. Zelensky addressed both gatherings via video link. Europe's focus on energy has intensified after OPEC Plus's landmark decision this week to cut oil production starting in November. Europe is on the brink of a nuclear disaster due to the capture of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant by Russian troops, Zelensky told EU leaders Friday. Never before has our continent faced such a threat, the threat of destroying underwater pipelines, cables, and tunnels. But now you can expect this from Russia. A Swedish investigation has found evidence of gross sabotage on the Nord Stream pipelines, which convey natural gas from Russia to Europe, after they were damaged in explosions last week. The Kremlin rejected the findings. Taiwan wants to build a backup satellite internet network in the wake of the Ukraine war, its digital minister told the Washington Post. Taiwan is set to begin accepting proposals from service providers for satellite internet as soon as this month. Ukraine has used Starlink, through Elon Musk's company SpaceX, as a backup internet provider since Russia's invasion. Zelensky met with Samantha Power, head of the U.S. Agency for International Development, in Kyiv on Thursday as she highlighted U.S. funding for efforts to rebuild Ukrainian infrastructure. Power toured reconstruction and agriculture projects and met with local journalists and entrepreneurs. Throughout her visit, she made the case for the value of America's non-military assistance to Ukraine, which she said has totaled some $10 billion since Russia's invasion began. Vladimir Kara-Murza, a Russian opposition politician who is being held in a detention center over comments he made in the United States opposing the war, now faces a new charge of treason. He writes opinion columns for The Washington Post.